What's going on, guys? Killer6, and this is my top 10 things that Wonderlands needs to be a hit with Borderlands fans. Thanks for tuning into this video. If you like what I do, make sure you hit that like button and hit subscribe for more Borderlands and Wonderlands content. With that, let's get started.
And number 10 is...
At number 10, this one seems very simple, but doing this right isn't always as easy as it sounds. A fresh, new, standalone story. In previous Borderlands games, besides Borderlands 1, each story has had to, in varying degrees, try to fit the mold of the original game's layout for the story. Vault monsters, sirens, greedy corporations trying to grab that power for themselves, and the vault hunters who want treasure and loot, but also tend to want to do the right thing. Well, except in the pre-sequel, but that's a different story. But crafting a standalone story revolving around the Borderlands franchise of characters is a tricky task, and mishandling any small or major part of that will always result in negativity from fans, whether it's fair or not. But with Sam Winkler as the head writer, I have a lot of faith in the story of Wonderlands. Sam had previously done writing work on each of the 4 Borderlands 3 DLCs, which in my opinion were all very well crafted. He also co-wrote the Commander Lilith DLC for Borderlands 2, which I enjoyed tremendously as well.
Number 9! No, Gary, that's an upside down 6! Who are you trying to fool?
Coming in at number 9 is Mr. Torg. Sure, we've had some Torg in Borderlands 3, but I think one of the main issues that Borderlands 3 had was not bringing enough of the memorable characters back in supporting roles. Mr. Torg was there in the slaughter maps, but that was it. Granted, sometimes voice actors might be busy on other projects, so maybe it was a time constraint issue, I really don't know, but the Borderlands fandom loves Mr. Torg, and his absence in Borderlands 3 was rough. Honestly, the same goes for Tiny Tina, Mordecai, and Brick. Sure, they were in the game, but so sparingly that they almost felt like an afterthought. We need more fan-favorite characters returning in Wonderlands.
Don't hate, it's number 8!
At number 8, how about a hint of the future? Starting with the end of Borderlands the pre-sequel, we were teased that a war was coming and that we would need all the Vault Hunters we could gather. Since then, it feels like maybe the unnamed Guardian that told us that was full of shit. In Borderlands 3, we get another hint of this future conflict with the final Ava murder mystery in DLC 6, the Director's Cut DLC, but largely that war has been forgotten. Now, while I said that I want Wonderlands to have a strong standalone story, that doesn't mean that we can't touch upon some of this other stuff, either in DLCs, side quests, or even just with character dialogue.
Oh god, what was that movie again? The one with Brad Pitt, what's in the box? What's in the box?
At number 7 is a no-brainer and almost certainly something that they're going to do: spells instead of grenades. The 4th DLC from Borderlands 2 and the story that set the table for Wonderlands to become a game, Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep, gave players some of the most memorable grenade options that I fully expect to see returning. The Magic Missile and the Chain Lightning, obviously other options like the Fireball. But I would love to see other grenade options like Healing Spells, Acid Arrow, Astral Projection, Teleport, Clone, so many others. Using them in the grenade slot as something that you can cast on a timer could be an absolutely amazing addition to the game. Those of you guys who've played D&D games, let me know in the comments below which spells you think would make the best options in this type of game.
This is how many times this gun can make me happy! It's number 6!
And number 6 is something that we've wanted badly in all of the Borderlands games for multiple playthroughs: dialogue and story skip, and as well as a balanced additional playthrough option. Once you beat a Borderlands game, you're usually just getting started. Most players like to run through a second playthrough on a harder difficulty, increasing their character level, finding better weapons and gear. The problem has always been that in order to do that on a Borderlands game, you have to play through the whole story again. Borderlands 3 attempted to tackle that problem by making True Vault Hunter mode completely optional. Playing on normal mode with Mayhem enabled is identical to playing on True Vault Hunter mode with Mayhem enabled on Borderlands 3, and this was only a partial, non-ideal solution though, as again, players want additional difficulty and better rewards. Borderlands 2's solution of ultimate mode and OP levels wasn't ideal either, as ultimate mode was horribly imbalanced and heavily dependent on slag to do damage, and OP levels required you to replace your gear every 3 levels, give or take. So some sort of middle ground needs to exist, and we need the option to skip that story, even if it's just a character dialogue skip, to help speed up subsequent playthroughs.
And here we are at number 5!
Coming in at number 5, fully customizable Vault Hunters. I'm talking appearance from skin color to hair to eye color, number of fingers, scars, and even boob size. One of the coolest memories I have from back when I was a teenager playing Dungeons and Dragons with my friends was the time that we spent just figuring out what we wanted our characters to look like. We actually probably spent more time on that than we did playing the game. And with a game like this one, it seems obvious to have that aspect of play. Additionally, I would also love to see our characters actually show up in cutscenes for once in the history of Borderlands.
Moving on to number 4.
Jumping now to number 4, named enemies with dedicated drops. Another staple of the Borderlands franchise is loot. It's arguably one of the most important aspects, really. At launch, Borderlands 3 had major loot problems. Much like in Borderlands 1, a lot of the Borderlands 3 loot was just world drops only, and there were a lot of named enemies with no drops or named enemies that didn't even respawn, so you couldn't farm them. Now, they ultimately did fix that, but I want to see this be addressed at launch on Wonderlands. If there is a named enemy, make sure they drop something. And for the love of all that's holy, let's not overstuff the loot pools in Wonderlands. If a dark elf named Jimbo the Minuscule has a dope ass sword in his loot pool, then please don't also make him drop a wood blocker and a gunnerang. Okay, cool.
And now we're down to number 3.
Sliding in at number 3, swords. Much like spells that I mentioned earlier, having swords in the game feels like a no-brainer, and it's something that players were actually hoping to even see in Borderlands 3. Destiny has successfully implemented swords into their arsenal, so I don't see a reason why Borderlands can't do the same. Clearly, this lends itself more to close quarters combat, but having a mix of swords and guns would be the ultimate Borderlands mashup. I just hope that there's some sort of double-handed options like the S-Beats blade from Phantasy Star Online, or a double-ended option like Darth Maul's lightsaber from Phantom Menace. There is so much they can do with swords, and I cannot wait to see what they come up with.
This one almost made it to number 1, but it didn't, so it's number 2.
One of the most important things, in my opinion, that makes Borderlands games so much fun and so repeatable is in-game content. Raid bosses, takedowns, named enemies that you love to hunt and slay for loot. So at number 2 on my list, I'm going with in-game right out of the gate. Day 1 raid bosses and takedowns. This was one of the blunders of Borderlands 3, in my opinion. Not having a raid boss in the game at launch meant that we had to wait in order to test ourselves. It was 2 long months before the Malawan takedown dropped in Borderlands 3. And if we had some traditional raid bosses in the game, a la Terramorphous or Vermivorous, even though they would be returning from a previous game, then that wait wouldn't have felt so brutal. Wonderlands, for me, will have to have something to do upon completing the story, and that needs to exist right at the launch of the game. Borderlands fans have grown to expect that, and without it, Wonderlands could struggle for replayability.
Honorable mention.
My honorable mention for this list goes to the amazing map detail tricks like we saw in the Psycho Creek DLC. Whoever masterminded these effects is a genius, and I would love to see more of these types of effects in Wonderlands.
And finally, here we are at number 1.
Finally, at number 1, something I feel will be crucial to the success of Wonderlands. Will Arnett has to be the best villain in Borderlands history since Handsome Jack. And I know all of you negative Nancys will be like, but K6, that's a low bar to set because the Calypso twins suck. Well, while I agree that the Calypsos were not as menacing, threatening, or memorable as Jack, I personally enjoyed them as villains. I enjoyed them for what they were. They were supposed to be cringy Twitch streamer type enemies, but if nothing else, the gimmick of conjoined twins sharing siren powers was absolutely brilliant. Anyone that actually did the side quests and tracked down the Typhon logs and echoes that involved the twins will know that what they did in the story and how they became so corrupted actually works and it makes sense. But I digress. Back to Handsome Jack. In all my years of playing video games, Handsome Jack remains the one villain that stands above all others to me. Menacing, mean, evil to the core, yet hilarious. He has style, charisma, and a broken moral compass. For Will Arnett to top that, or even come close to being on level with Handsome Jack, he's going to need to provide an amazing vocal performance. And personally, I love Will Arnett, and I feel like if there's anybody out there that's capable of pulling off the impossible for evil but lovable characters, Will Arnett might just be the guy to do it. That's my top 10 wish list for Wonderlands. Let me know down in the comment section below what you most want to see from this game. If you enjoyed this video, please take a second to hit that like button and hit subscribe for more Borderlands and Wonderlands content. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care.